The time is just gone 8:36 a.m. as we continue with this morning's edition of News and Views, and we're going across now to be joined by the Deputy Executive Director at the Afro-Middle East Center, AMEC, and International Relations Strategist. We're talking with Sister Zeenat Adam, and this comes against the background of Donald Trump and his visit to the Middle East, to Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar in particular. And this obviously raises a number of questions. What does this visit actually mean? Is this about diplomacy or is it purely about business? Is it about betrayal? And is this blood money in motion? Because we all know Donald Trump, he is a person that won't come with principles. He'll come with price tags. And we've seen the red carpet treatment that the pomp and the ceremony with which Donald Trump was greeted in Saudi Arabia, in Qatar, and also in the United Arab Emirates. We're talking about nearly 2 trillion committed to the USA, a $400 million aircraft as a gift to a man who supported the wholesale and still supports the slaughter of Muslims, whose bombs, whose weapons are the ones that have been killing babies and innocent people in Palestine. Sister Zeenat, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jummah Mubarak to you and welcome.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jummah Mubarak to your listeners and to you.
Yes, clearly, Sister Zeenat, this visit by Donald Trump to Saudi Arabia, to Qatar, and the UAE has raised many an eyebrow. And while not a morsel of food for those being deliberately starved, and we know a famine is deeply entrenched in Gaza right now, and this visit comes at a time when people are still being killed, when we know hundreds so far has been killed while Donald Trump was in Saudi Arabia, while he was in Qatar, and now that he's in the UAE.
On the commemoration of the Nakba, the Gazans experienced one of the worst atrocities and worst nights of bombing. And in the meanwhile, we have Arab leaders capitulating to Donald Trump, pouring in trillions to the United States when not a drop of water can go to a single Palestinian in Gaza. This does appear to be a betrayal unless those trillions are used as leverage to bring an end to atrocities. And so far, we haven't seen them delivering on that.
Yes, interesting. You speak about trying to use this as leverage, and again, we've seen the deafening silence. But again, people must know, and I think it's important, and perhaps you could just comment on this as well. That there is all this talk about Netanyahu being sidelined by Donald Trump's visit, and again. I think we know where Donald Trump actually, where his funding came during the election as well, and how he was actually elected. I mean, will Donald Trump actually ditch Benjamin Netanyahu? And that is a question that is being asked in it.
So we know that Donald Trump does have very close ties to Israel and to the Israeli lobby, and that his election was heavily funded by APAC. So certainly he would want to appear to be aligned to them. We know in his first term and during his very first foreign visit to Riyadh, it was all about pushing for the Abraham Accords and the normalization of relations with Israel. He then followed that with a visit to Israel. This time he hasn't done that. And in the last few weeks, there have been reports in Israeli media that there is a rift between him and Netanyahu. Before Trump came into office on this term, we knew that they were not the best of friends, but given the circumstances of what was taking place and the payback that would have been required for the generous and strong support, there was an expectation that this would continue. What seems to be irking Netanyahu at this stage is that the Americans have gone ahead and had direct talks and negotiations with Yemen in order to de-escalate the situation from Ansarullah. There are now beginnings of direct talks with Iran, and we've seen that happen with brokerage by Oman, and this was repeated in some of the visits over the last few days. There was direct talk with Hamas in order for there to be the release of an American hostage. And from the Qatari side, we heard from the Qatari Prime Minister that those talks would have included the addition of the other Israeli hostages held in Gaza, but the stubbornness of Netanyahu of wanting to continue the war and continuing to bomb sites such as the hospitals had derailed that agreement. We've seen that there is some kind of a movement away from each other in that sense. I also think that Trump sees these trillions of dollars being poured into to America and into their coffers as the Arabs being able to give something while Israel is just on the take in terms of funding their war.
Yes, but also, Sister Zeenat, we're seeing a common pattern with all these visits, whether we're talking about Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. And this common pattern is we see Donald Trump offering arms to all these countries. They are offering investments in return. He is promising them protection. They are pledging their loyalty to him. And while Donald Trump is securing his empire, and while these countries are securing their own thrones and their empires as well, all of this, while the Palestinians have actually still been sacrificial lambs, and again, when we see how these countries have been surviving by American weapons, by strengthening the American bases in their country. Yesterday, we heard about $10 billion that was pledged by Qatar for the American base and to pay for the American base being in Qatar as well. And once again, this tells us a story that they are securing their thrones, but at the same time, they actually fear their own people more than the West.
For a long time, these countries have held the belief that they need to have a cozy relationship with the United States for their own survival. And this really has cinched that by pouring in much more and resecuring a Al-Udeid base from which so many Muslim countries were attacked, because this is Central Command. Afghanistan, Iraq, other wars have been launched from this launch pad. And now there is a resecuring of it. But these countries are some of the most prolific buyers of military hardware. And the question is, what are they doing with all of that? If you can't stand up to Israel, if you can't protect the Palestinian people, then it does come across as a betrayal. Now, we heard the only place where some of a mention of Gaza came out was from Qatar. And this is because the negotiations have been ongoing, Qatar being the mediator. In all the other countries that Trump had visited, there was not a mention of Palestine. We heard the grand announcement in Saudi Arabia of the lifting of sanctions in Syria. This was a milestone, certainly, and for the Syrian people will make huge difference to be free of sanctions after 45 years of being under complete economic siege. In Qatar, we heard very scant talk of the Gaza situation, mostly from the emirs, but we saw that Trump was trying to avoid that. He deflected to talking about Ukraine and Russia instead of addressing the Palestinian issue. But we're also aware that behind the scenes, his envoy Witkoff was meeting with an Israeli and Palestinian delegation mediated by the Qataris, hoping to deliver something, and that was not possible. And so I think part of the brutality that we witnessed last night from the Israelis against the Palestinians is in response to this visit to say that no matter what you do as Arabs, no matter how much you think you have leverage from the things that you are giving to Trump, we will still continue to do whatever we want to in Gaza, and we will continue to ethnically cleanse and continue the Nakba and take over that land. Now, remember, the Israelis sold this to Trump as a real estate deal that Gaza could become a beautiful beachside property. The question is, would he reverse that thinking now that he's met with the Arab leaders? Would there have been any support for that? Certainly not in the UAE, who have shown their absolute support for Israel during this entire war.
Yes, but also, Sister Zeenat, if you were a Palestinian, and it's actually quite important to understand the mindset of the Palestinians when they see what is playing out around them, when they see what is coming out of Trump's visit. To all these countries, watching them smiling for photos. And this obviously was a man who moved the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem. He cheered the expansion policy, the expansionist policy of Israel, the genocide as well. And as a Palestinian, I mean, are they looking at this as treachery that is actually wrapped in protocol and also complicity with the oppressors?
It is the ultimate betrayal, but it's not surprising for the Palestinians. They've been calling on the Arab world to do something for the last 19 months, and there's been no response. This has just put the nail in the coffin of Palestinians. And I think that it does seem to be absolute betrayal. That you have all of these trillions, and what have you done with it? You've entered into an agreement of slavery, and you've accepted submission to the Lord and the empire of in the form of Trump, instead of standing with your brothers and sisters. And this is really the tragedy of what we've witnessed over the last few days.
Well, clearly it is a tragedy, and basically sending also a message to the people of Palestine that we couldn't care. You are on your own.
Unfortunately, that appears to be what has taken place. Yeah.
Well, Sister Zeenat, Jazakallah khairan so much for that, and taking time out this morning for us right here on Assalam Media. I know there's just so much more that we would be able to unpack, but I'm sure as time goes by, and we'll obviously again see what the outcome of the visit would be, and how many more billions and trillions will be invested by the United Arab Emirates, and as Trump actually prepares to leave after this visit to these countries. But I know you are watching all of this with interest as well, and I'm sure at some point in time we will be able to unpack a lot more. But for now, we thank you. We say Jazakallah to you. Have yourself a wonderful Jummah as well. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
That was Zeenat Adam, Deputy Executive Director at the Afro-Middle East Center, International Relations Strategist, with us this morning against the deafening silence of the Arabs as far as Gaza is concerned. And once again, raises a question with regard to the leadership in the Middle East, and asking the question, is this true leadership, or is this treachery that is actually wrapped in protocol with their complicity with the oppressors? And again, we see weapons for despots, and wealth for the warlords, and again, silence on the part of the Ummah. But again, with all the pomp and with all the glitz and the glamour with which Donald Trump was received by Saudi Arabia, by Qatar, and also by the United Arab Emirates, let us remember that Judgment Day will come. And that is a day when there will be no red carpet for those who have been complicit in the killing and the brutal and the savagery that has been meted out and still being meted out to the people of Palestine. With that, we're going to go for a quick break. We come back. It's time for Juma Inspirations with Maulana Ridwan Lahe.